So, hello, Rachel. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Windswept, but good. It's
I,
awful.
I was going to say I'm interesting, but no, I don't think that's necessarily true. So, so talking about interesting, we have had an interesting time. We've been trying to have this conversation face to face for, gosh, it must be getting on for a couple of years, but
Yes.
various things have gotten in the way. 2020 being one of them. And although we have been working on some other things behind the scenes, and we'll probably talk about that another time. But for the moment, I really wanted to catch up with you and explore what you've been doing in the area of your charity endeavor,
Yeah.
which I think is phenomenal. And I believe it's fair to say, it is true, that you are the founder of Hidden Needs Trust, the
Yes.
charity.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Good. I've got the right
You've got the right person.
Could you tell us, people who are listening and
Yes.
watching this, about Hidden Needs Trust? What is it?
Yes, right. I founded the Hidden Needs Trust late in 2014 to raise money for the very specialist opportunity groups in Dorset and Somerset, that preschool groups that support special educational needs children and their families and carers. And it was supposed to be just a one-off fundraise the following year. And 5 years later, we were under the Somerset Community Foundation banner for 2 or 3 years. And 5 years later, I'm now my own charity in my own right. And we've actually expanded so that any young person under the age of 25 can benefit from Hidden Needs Trust in Dorset and Somerset. So the younger adults with learning difficulties, any specialist education provision in the two counties, and of course the families, the carers and the siblings. So it's really widened. Excuse me. And I called it the Hidden Needs Trust because many of the young people have got hidden needs, literally. To Joe Public, they would not present particularly differently to their peers. And this can cause a real difficulty for not only the young people, but also for the families. For example, there could be late diagnoses. So by the time a child has a diagnosis, they might be 8 or 9, and a lot of damage has been done because they haven't had the support. Going out in public, for example, I'll give you an example with my little girl. We were in Waitrose in Sherborne, and she has sensory issues. So she had suddenly an absolute hissy fit on the floor, and an older lady made very loud noises, supposedly under her breath, about the behaviour and what a bad mother I was and so on and so forth. And she was very sad when I just sort of said, I'm really sorry, but she's got additional needs. And it was the realization that actually loads and loads of people don't understand this world. So I feel the name is very appropriate.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And it talking about the raising awareness and getting people to understand that individuals can have these needs that aren't necessarily obvious. To raise awareness and funds about that, you have got yourself involved, is perhaps one way to describe it, in some amazing physical challenges, taking part, completing some things which, well, I think are quite astounding. Could you tell me just a few of the things that you've done? Well, I didn't want to say that, but...
Well, I suppose the first year I thought, okay, I must do some fundraising. Basically, what happened was the opportunity group in Yeovil, of which I was a trustee, was going to lose £40,000 worth of funding. So I thought, okay, let's do some fundraising. But there's no way with all my work and my experiences and my qualifications I could use any of those. So I thought, well, I'll tell you what, I'll do a physical challenge. I'd never run a marathon before in my life. Years ago, I was a long jumper, but anything long distance. No. But I thought everybody these days runs marathons. So I thought I'll run 7 marathons in 7 days. And so I got a t-shirt and we had a very simple leaflet. My son, George, who was 14 at the time, made me do social media. My God, that's awful. But anyway, so he got a very basic website together, thinking again, we were only going to do it for a year. And so I ran all around Dorset, luckily had Abbey 104, the local radio station, on board. And the lovely Jenny Devitt came with me and interviewed me each day. We stayed away each night. And it was great fun, I have to say. Gosh, 7 days of being fed and watered in really nice places as well, which is great.
Yeah, that's interesting to say it was great fun.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was.
This is the full 26.4, is it? 26.4 miles.
Whatever, yeah.
Every day over
every day.
7 days.
Yes.
How did you recover? What did you? Because you got less than 24 hours to recover. Was it ice baths?
No.
Gin?
No,
Was it
no,
gin?
no, wine. No, it was. I have to say, I just muddled through it. I just did it, and I think, and as well, every place that I ended up, I tried to do a fun activity, because I thought there's no way people are going to take any notice of this batty 50-year-old woman just running with a Hidden Knees Trust t-shirt on. They need to know what it's all about. So, for example, we had a mass musical chairs set up at West Bay, thanks to Samway's Fish, which was hilarious. And it's something that I'm going to do next year, that we're supposed to have done it all this year. With the schools and other businesses. Great fun, great community thing. But of course, couldn't do it. So I did a skinny dip down at Studland Bay under the British Naturist banner, which again was so funny. And got lots of sponsorship for that. So the more the wacky events I could put on, the better. And then at the end of the year, I had so many phone calls and emails saying, don't stop, you can be our voice at last. So each year I've done a bigger and bigger and bigger physical challenge.
So give an example of another couple of things that you've done, because I mean, I know about some of them, but I think it's going to be really interesting for people to hear. What else have you done?
Well, in terms of the marathons, I then did 26 marathons in 26 days the following year.
What?
Which was, I know, totally. And my children helped. They came and joined in, and we had a wonderful photographer on board. And he was outstanding. Dave Diamond was outstanding, and he came along on most of the days, because those days I couldn't stay away because I had children to bring up. I'm on my own with my children, and so it was a question of getting them off to school and then getting in the car, somebody that driving the car, and starting at a certain point, doing the rounds, 26 miles. Flagging up people, saying hello to people, lobbing into schools for photographs and that sort of thing, and then coming back in time for the school run.
Wow!
But it was again, actually, it was tough in terms of juggling everything at home as well, rather than being away. But it was great. It was good fun.
That's astounding.
Yeah, and another year. I met up with a local para athlete,
right?
Ebony Court. Now, she actually has got cerebral palsy, which brings its own issues. And she was at the Oval Opportunity Group as a youngster. She then went and volunteered there, but she does every sport under the sun. She is so inspirational. And so I said, okay, if I get a sports wheelchair, a real proper sports wheelchair, what if we did a marathon and we did a race? So we did that. We did a static wheelchair marathon race. And it was to really, for me, to think, okay, we're talking about physical disabilities as well. And if she can get over it and do it, I'm going to have a go at doing that. And I want to see how it feels. And my goodness me, getting out of that wheelchair afterwards, I mean, it only took us, I can't remember how many minutes, not long, but getting up, my legs, I couldn't feel them. And I just thought, you do this every day. And she battles with all the issues that go with cerebral palsy, and she hasn't given up. And I just think that is inspirational.
It's
Just
inspirational. It's humbling
very much
as well. And I can think of, I've done a couple of marathons, and couldn't walk for about 3 months.
so.
So that truly is inspirational. And that reminds me now. I believe in carrying out one of these physical challenges that you had a potentially really serious injury. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. Well, it was actually before I'd done my first lot of marathons, and I'd been sponsored by the Battle Ready race team, which is like a marine team, to do one of these 10K really awful runs where you're going up here in water and through tunnels and over walls and so on and so forth. And so son George and I went along, and we went into the room, and there were about 84 professional runners there, and they do this every week, and you think, why? You're mad. So, and it was the whole day was just it just sang out of real uncomfortable everything. It was raining, that horrible rain that is just, from the moment you go out, you got soaked. You knew we were going to be up here with mud. And George and I just thought, oh, we'll just do it for a laugh. But of course, we're quite competitive. And we got to the starting line, and we just looked at each other and went, right, come on, we'll go for it. So off we went. And I'm afraid my ego got the better of me without any question of doubt, because I was about 2 obstacles away from the end. And one of the Marines shouted, "You're the second woman home and in the top 10." So I thought, "Ooh, that's good." So off I went, and I had to run up into this chamber, which was filled with black acrid smoke. And you had to take a deep breath in as you ran up and not breathe until you got out the other side. And so I didn't even think about it. I thought you ran up and was going to run through a container with a solid floor. No. So I tripped and then basically fell nearly 5 feet onto my cheek, and that was it. Broken neck. But
so broken neck. I think it's important to just
broken neck.
emphasize that you broke your neck.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened then? How were you?
Well, I actually, one of my young lads, William, he was only young at the time, and the first thing he said to me when he got to Bath major injuries unit said, "Did it hurt, mummy?" A typical child. And actually, funny enough, it didn't. It really didn't. It didn't. And in fact, I got up and made it to the end. But I just knew I was like this the whole time. I had this instinct that this was not good, And sure enough, yeah, it was a break, but it hadn't moved. I mean, I was so lucky, so lucky. That ended up, I can't remember how many weeks now, but a good number of weeks in a collar day and night. And but luckily had an amazing consultant that first of all said, "There's no way you're going to do these runs." Or these marathons. And I said, "There is, I'm doing them." There were going to be 3 scenarios. There was either going to be, I really couldn't do it and it was going to be too risky, in which case the Battle Ready race team said they'd do it.
Right.
Or I did it with a collar on and I still walked. Or I was lucky enough to still be fit enough because I carried on training, believe it or not. And luckily the collar came off. I think it was less than 2 weeks before I was doing the runs.
Was this against advice, or was it okay, you can do it, but be very careful? What
I was obviously under a spinal specialist, and they were absolutely brilliant. They really were, and they knew that I desperately wanted to do this run, and by hook or by crook. But as I said, I did have this safety net with the Battle Ready race team doing it, and actually, perhaps I should have let them do it. They probably would have raised loads more money than I did.
I don't know about that, but maybe you should have let them do it. I don't,
But the specialist was really good, and in fact, it was only a couple of weeks or so before I started these runs, and they gave me very, very good advice in terms of pain management, in terms of what levels I really had to start thinking, phone them up, this isn't so good. But I had this instinctive know in myself that it was going to be okay. Gut instinct was, it
Mm,
hadn't moved. I've kept strong.
mm.
You
Yeah,
know,
I'm a
this is
believer in
important.
instinct and indeed
Yeah,
intuition. But I have
yeah,
to say, though, that an awful lot of people would have said, "Whoa, enough! I'll take the
yeah.
easy option. Let someone else do this," and maybe even not try anything particularly, let's say, competitive.
Mhm.
After that, and I know you have done things since then, but also um, that leads me then to the next question that I want to ask you. There was something there which obviously drove you to do that, to complete it, to get back up again, when many people just wouldn't have done that. What is it that's driving you? I mean, obviously there's great physical challenge there, but that's connected to a mental challenge. And generally speaking, people are driven to do those things when they're so extreme, 26 marathons, and you're doing it because of the charity, to fundraise, to raise awareness. So what's behind it? In other words, what was the inspiration for the charity?
Right.
What drives you? And I know that you've told us about that these needs being hidden, but was there a point where you said, right, okay, in terms of an actual charity, I'm going to set this up?
Yes, definitely. Um, I have four very bright boys, obviously getting a bit older now, but also a little girl who has got additional needs. And I suddenly had to go from a fairly average world where I was working. I was doing therapies and teaching, writing courses for specific target groups on health and delivering them. Um, Loving it. I was fostering as well, full time, the emergency fostering. And suddenly my world got completely turned upside down. I had to become a full time carer. I had to give up my work. I had to give up the fostering eventually, um, because my little girl's needs were enormous, although they were hidden needs. Most people wouldn't have even gathered. Um, she had quite a lot of physical disabilities. She had bilateral hip dysplasia, for example, so was in a harness for weeks and weeks and weeks from 5 weeks on. She had a hernia, she had eye issues. They're still obviously ongoing. But very quickly, it became apparent that she had additional needs. And although I taught additional needs adults, when you've got a baby and you're doing it from scratch,
Yeah.
you enter a completely different world. And I had to shout and shout and shout, just help. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm going to do if I'm going to make my little girl's world worse because I have got no knowledge. Um, so it became very apparent that I had to get that knowledge very quickly. And so I basically picked up the phone to everybody that I could possibly think of, including my GPs, and said, look, I don't know what to do. Um, and luckily, I got all the help that I needed, and I was directed into all the different ways. So, for example, I ended up taking her to the Oval Opportunity Group, even though it was across the border in Somerset. I learned about music therapy, speech and language therapy, you name it, every therapy that my little girl had. I literally jumped in with both feet and just said, I want to know more about this. I want to know more about this. And I went into her music therapy sessions, for example, thinking, what a load of rubbish it's going to be, to be quite honest, which sounds awful, because I just thought, how can somebody just, they've told me that this will get her talking. Really? And it did. And if it wasn't for Martin, the music therapist, my little girl, who was very, very withdrawn, and she was the little one that would sit right at the opposite end of the room where all these other children were congregated and watch. She was very watchful. And she'd gradually, over the weeks, get a bit closer, get a bit closer. And by the time she left there, she was the chattiest, most bubbliest little thing ever. So that's where it really started. And I became a trustee of the Opportunity Group. And when I heard about this funding that was going to be dropped, I mean, they were going to lose £40,000 worth of cuts. That's when the thought of forming for this first year, for a year, a charity just to do some fundraising. But from there, it also became apparent that, I mean, there were only 2 opportunity groups in Dorset and 2 in Somerset. And if any of those groups closed, if I put myself in a parent's shoes, say, for example, I was, I don't know, Minehead and the Taunton group closed, I'd have to go to Yeovil with my child to get this specialist help. And that is just not feasible for many, many parents. So what do? They either don't have their children in these specialist schools, and they might then end up in mainstream, which could be completely and utterly destroying for that child. So it was very apparent that I needed to know more and more and more about this world. How can we help not only with the fundraising, but what other things, what other hurdles do these families face? And the lovely thing about the special needs world, if you like, is the fact it is such a close community, and everybody in it that I have experienced is there to help other people. Everybody gets together, and it is such a different world. It is the most loving of worlds. It really is. And there's always somebody that is out there that you can pick their brains and say, well, I've got this. And then there are various forums and things you can get onto anyway. But that's really what set it all off, my experience of something so out of the blue.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if anybody listening to this, watching this, has done any caring at all, they'll know that just that on its own is so demanding. And then to add in the fact that you there are other children, and this is a child, and there are special needs, it beggars belief. And it also, I think, it throws into stark relief how heroic all those things that you've been doing in terms of the fundraising and in terms of the physical challenges actually are and continue to be. And thinking about continuing to be, what are you doing now, and what are the plans for the future? Because obviously 2020 has been really odd. So what's happening now, and what are the plans for the future in terms of locally and also perhaps further afield?
Okay. Well, 2020 started off with quite a bang, actually. It was good because for the last couple of years, I've put on a big concert at the wonderful Octagon Theatre in Yeovil. And these concerts were completely inclusive. We managed to get literally hundreds of seats sponsored so that sixth forms of the specialist schools came along. We had just young people with additional needs. We had families, we had carers, we had, I should think, the majority of the Down syndrome pocket in Sherborne coming along, and all having a free night out. A real once in a life experience, which was absolutely fantastic. And the band Just Take That, which is a Take That tribute band, have been amazing for 2 years. And we did have another one booked, but sadly, of course, in January, it's not going to happen. But it raised a lot of money, and it raised a huge amount of awareness. And because these families were getting free tickets, I personally went and delivered nearly all of them so that I could see where other families were. So that made the whole SDN community bigger for me. So I knew where families were, which is fantastic. Then, of course, lockdown. So I thought, oh dear, what? No fundraising. But actually, it's been an even better year. I haven't been able to do my physical challenge. So I'm doing 2 next year, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But it's made me really realize that it's not just money that families need and schools need. They have oodles more hurdles they have to get over. For example, I had one mum this year move from a tiny flat to a house. and she suddenly needed everything for a house and a
Mm.
lawnmower and things like that. So I thought, okay, we'll start sourcing bits and putting them in the barn. And lo and behold, this year we've donated out so much stuff to so many families. We've literally just said, shout if you need anything. And we've had a young girl, 24, only last weekend, and she's been made homeless basically. Luckily, able to live with friends. Um, but as soon as she now gets a house, we've got a barn that is stocked full of virtually everything she needs. You know, it's been wonderful from that side. I've had a parent having to go through an appeal court because the HCPs are just not updated frequently enough. And when you've got a child that's now 8 and the latest EHCP was 2 at 2 years old, and with children with additional needs, things are frequently really, really changing fast. You know, that had to be dealt with. So it was going through paperwork with her. Um, yeah, things like that. It was all about, let's see what is actually happening out there. What are the problems? And it's not just about money. So you know, we've had families coming up to get donated goods, socially distancing, being able to see George, the Hidden Needs Trust goat, who's lovely, and just being able to spend time, 5 minutes with him, you know, and their little faces are sort of, ooh, this is good. So yeah, I mean, it's just made me think completely out of the box. And
That's great, and
yeah,
even as you described that, you think, oh my goodness, how much support these families really need,
yeah,
and that you're providing, which is great.
well, you can imagine, can't you? If you've got a family that's suddenly completely having to self-isolate or just in lockdown, and one of them has got additional needs, their whole world has been turned upside down and they cannot cope. I mean, the escalation of behavior issues has been enormous. And the knock-on effect to siblings, we've had parents absolutely end of their tether trying to homeschool. And just to be able to say, I'm coming to your doorstep with a great big box of stuff and for your children, and their faces when they look out the window, oh, it's Rachel with a box of bits, you know, it's just been lovely,
That
really lovely.
that 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 really is, and again, I'm sure a lot of people will be able to not necessarily identify exactly, but think about their situation during the lockdown and how
Mm.
difficult it may have been for them, and they pretty much had everything. You know,
Yeah,
Netflix
yeah,
was
yeah,
there, maybe they
yeah,
were being paid, and still found it a little bit tough. But
yeah.
when you add in those other factors and a child or children, that must be and must have been extremely tough, extremely
Mm.
difficult. And so, you know, respect, kudos, and thanks to you and the charity for offering that relief amidst it all. And what about the future then, Rachel? What are the plans? Because I know you're not going
Well,
to stop.
no, no. Well, as I said, I'm doing 2 physical challenges next year. So Chris Hemsworth, I'm going to get him tagged into this
Right.
because he, well, I won't tell you any more about that, but look up Chris Hemsworth's challenges.
Okay.
And it is going to be the toughest of all my challenges next year. And it
Right.
lasts a month, a whole month.
Right. And
So
Chris Hemsworth, for people who
Chris
maybe.
Hemsworth played Thor in the Marvel films.
So
He's
just to be clear, it is that Chris. So
Chris
this is
Hemsworth.
Thor.
Yes, yes, that's right.
We're talking Thor.
Oh, I tell you very briefly. He basically has got oodles of personal trainers and who make him into Thor. And he has an app, and he put out his 30-day physical challenge. You see, so my son George, who's now 20, bless his cotton socks, said, "Do you know women don't do this challenge?" And so I looked at him, I said, I'm not going to become a hench granny, thank you. You know, at the age of 56.
Yeah, leave that
And he
one
said,
to
no, no,
me.
no. He said, we should pay for it. But he said, women don't do this challenge, let alone I'll be 56 next year, a 56-year-old with a broken neck and bilateral hip dysplasia. So he said, why don't we go and see Simon Partridge, who's at SP Fit in Sherborne and who's my personal trainer, and run it past him. So we did yesterday, funny enough. And he said, absolutely, brilliant, I'm up for this. But what I need is a really, really good social media stroke marketing marketing chap or woman, and also a really good photographer and filmer, because of course a lot of these trainings, it's training twice a day, doing meditation, specific diet, you name it, and it's got to go on things like Instagram and what have you. And of course there's no way I'm going to have time to do it. So if anybody's out there, and we're also going to try and copy in Joe Wicks, the young chap. Yeah. So because this could be, if we do it right, this could make potentially a lot of money.
Wow.
And especially if we can get a sponsor for my training sessions.
Right. So in terms of the Chris sessions, then what is it that you need?
Well, luckily, you see, I've got my personal trainer who's absolutely brilliant, Simon, and we're going to do it towards the back end of the summer, because obviously it's nicer weather. We can use outside, which means we can use really quite gruesome equipment, which is good, rather than being in the studio, in the gym. And so we're going to mark out a great big area, and twice a day I have to go to that area at very specific times, and it's going to be filmed and photographed. We'll do the filming at the very start when I do all my stats, and at the end of the first week, second, third and fourth. We'll do some filming at home as well of, gosh, the amount I'm going to have to eat is unbelievable. But we are, so in case you think that I'm going to look like the Hulk at the end, I'm not going to, because this is a physical fitness challenge for me. So I won't be using the sort of weights that he does, but a lot of it is things like bear crawls really fast, and it's really bizarre stuff. And it's a lot of people apparently who've tried it give up at about day 10.
Oh, right.
Well, I'm not going to. By hook or by crook, I am not going to. I'm going to do this because if we get the professionals on board that could be the marketing and social media things, I'm not going
to professionals. So marketing.
Yeah.
Anybody who can help with that. Social media.
Yeah.
Cameras. Do you need people to film this as well?
Yes, we need somebody to come probably once a week and actually take some footage of training, take some basic photographs and what have you, but they've just got to be really good, because otherwise if it's done in a low-key style, we're not going to get the money. You know, this is just Rachel Goodfellow from Sherborne doing something stupid again. But if we can get some really big names there, really good, who they'd say, yeah, okay, for a month we'll do this for nothing for you, and we'll sponsor your gym sessions, then it could work.
Oh, great. Right.
So,
well, I hope the right people hear this, watch this, and fingers crossed, because that sounds like an incredible endeavor, and tough.
Yeah, definitely tough.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Rachel, but very
tough.
Well,
it's going to be a bit different from marathons.
It is. It is.
Yeah, but George and I, the son that suggested it, we've actually tried some of these exercises. Well, just watch this space.
we will do. And as we then begin to draw our conversation to a close, a couple of questions for you. Beyond that, then, and that's not to dismiss the challenge that you will be undertaking. What does the charity look like in the future? And second question, how can people help? Obviously, there's help being requested for the Thor challenge, if I could call it that, but also beyond that. So, what are the plans charity-wise for the future, and also how can people help in general terms?
Right. Well, obviously, in the next couple of years, we've got to see what's happening. You know, especially next year. If I can do events next year, I definitely need people to come and be hands-on helpers, if we can do that socially. Because I'm the sole fundraiser, and dragging people like friend Terry, who's over there, and children in to help, you know, it's really hard if you're suddenly having to do lots of events. Donations, obviously, not just of money, but anything from a teaspoon to furniture. We can store it in the barn. There are families out there that are really desperate, so we can do all that. Just generally, just if you feel that you've got some experience if you've got experience or expertise, say, for example, in um, careers for young adults with additional needs, you're so needed, because a lot of the families don't know what to do when their child gets to 18, 21, whatever. Particularly those families with children in care, that they really drop through the wayside. And just some advice: there are going to be businesses out there that will take on young adults with additional needs, because they are quite capable, most of them really capable of working. Actually, some very brilliantly, far better than I would be doing. So that's aside. You might be a family who have got expertise in the fact that you've been bringing up one or more children with additional needs. Families out there who've just had recent diagnoses of their children, they are like I was, completely stuffed. And we need you. We need you just to be able to be there. If I can, if I have families ringing and asking me for things, and I have a little black book full of names, because the majority of the time I don't know the answers, but I bet you anything there's somebody out there, perhaps in my book, that will do. So just please come on board if you've got any form, even if you sort of think, well, I've got a bit of family background in that, but it's not going to do any good. I bet you anything it will be brilliant. So we need you to come forwards, please. And then, of course, looking in the long term, I would absolutely love to see the Hidden Needs Trust have links in every county right across GB, because it would be fantastic to be under a banner, under the Hidden Needs Trust banner, but find somebody in every county that would say, okay, I'll be the core person in this county and I will fundraise. I'll find a fundraising team and we will do the same, but for our young people in our county. And what could then happen would be the money would be in the HNT pot under their name. So it would grow. And at the end of the year, they then give it out to the children and young people, or the specialist schools in their county. And interesting enough, in only the last few weeks, I've had interest from an orphanage in Uganda. They got in contact. It's called the Joy Orphanage, and they have 50 orphans, all of HIV and AIDS families, which again is very close to my heart, because I trained as an AIDS counsellor many years ago. And they got in contact just to say, is there any way you can help? And of course, then having been in contact with Muhindu, who is one of the leaders, it's a very Christian-led school, orphanage. They need everything possible all the time, to keep going. And you look at them and think, do you know what? Those children have got special educational needs. They are struggling to actually cope with life as it is, with doing education in quite squalor, quite often, not squalor necessarily, but really with reduced means. And so apart from trying to get stuff out there at the moment, my thoughts are, okay, how can we get you under the HNT banner somehow in the future? Not now. I'd have to get some real thinking hats on and get advice. But could this also reach out beyond the UK?
Wow. And inspirational thoughts, and hopefully that will come to pass. So beyond the UK, and certainly within the UK. So anybody in the UK right now who wants to get in contact with Rachel, we'll put the contact details in the description to this little video podcast, can do so. And so when we're talking about all that stuff that's happening, it's not simply in your area. It's thinking, yeah, that's happening there, but this could also, by hard work and osmosis, find its way into every corner of GB, as you say, and also further afield, as we've just heard. So that's a fantastic vision. And given your track record so far, I think it's unlikely to stay just a vision, Rachel. So good luck with that. And obviously we'll be in touch, and I need to find out how I can help as well. And I guess from me, unless you have anything else that you want to add, that's probably enough for people to think about and digest, and hopefully take
Well
some
enough, I should
action.
think.
Yeah, hopefully that they will be in contact. And we should also say, yes, thank you to Terry, who's not on camera at the moment. He may just creep along in the background, I'm not sure. But without him, this wouldn't have been possible, as they say. And he's also involved in some other stuff that we're developing as well. So so thank you, Terry. And of course, Rachel, thank you ever so much for your time.
You.
And good luck going forward.
Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. It's been brilliant.
My pleasure.
Take care. Bye.
Bye for now.